Well, hey, everybody. I'm Pastor Chris, and honored to be here with you as we celebrate the resurrection, the one time in our year, in our lives, that empty is a good thing because the grave's empty. He's alive. But most of the time, empty is not a good thing. Many times people feel empty, and that's a painful feeling. If you think about our churches and the malls and the arenas all being empty, and people are hurting in this season. Empty pockets, an empty fridge, empty stomachs, all represent pain. If you think about maybe someone stuck in an empty home, or if there's an empty chair in that home, where maybe some loved one isn't around or they can't get to them, or maybe they've passed. And empty always represents pain except today. Mostly it represents hurting. I think about how many times people try to do something and come up empty, and it's hard and it's frustrating. And it reminds me of a story from Luke chapter 5. Before the disciples were followers of Jesus, they were fishing, and Peter's out there with the guys in Luke 5 after a long night of fishing, and they come up empty. Their nets are empty, and they come back. They've worked hard all night, and the rabbi's on the shore, and he tells them, hey, why don't you try to throw your nets on the other side? And they're like, we've been doing this all night, but because you said so, we'll try. And they do, and they find their nets are fulfilled. They're filled to overflowing. And they find not only are their empty nets filled, but their empty lives get fulfilled by following Jesus. He says, come and follow me, and they do. And they find out in real time, in a real relationship, what he meant when he said, I have come to give life in all its fullness, because they found fullness in Jesus. And just imagine what it would have been like to walk with Jesus for 3 years, to see all that he did. The Gospel of John actually says if all of it was recorded, there weren't be enough libraries to contain the books of all that Jesus did. But they're walking with him. They're seeing the blind receive sight, the dead raised. They see so much happening as they're walking with Jesus, not even to mention the relationship and the experiences and the love that they're receiving, the brotherhood with the disciples. And I could just imagine if it were in today's world, the social media or Instagram posts that would be coming up that are hashtagged, and the guys would be sitting around a fire one night after a big long day of ministry and just feeling overwhelmed and blessed, that they would just take a picture and put squad goals, hashtag blessed, hashtag my cup runs over, because they're just so full and they're experiencing life in all its fullness. It's like they're living in this amazing fairy tale with Jesus. But then, as you all know, something went wrong. And the one that they put all their hopes and dreams in was put on a cross. And we just celebrated that on Good Friday. And the one place that they found true life was put to death. The light of the world was dimmed by darkness. The love that came through Jesus was hung by hate on a cross. And Jesus, the Son of God, died on a cross that day. And the sun in the sky refused to shine. And it was like everything turned to darkness. And if you've ever lost somebody that you love, you know exactly what that feels like. Whenever someone you love is passed on from this life to the next, it's like that light inside goes out for a season, and grief is hard. And these guys, they're walking with Jesus, and they found fulfillment, and now they're emptier than ever. And one guy really had it the worst. I think Peter probably experienced it the worst because he was filled with shame and regret. He said, Jesus, I'm with you. I'll never deny you. And then, as you all know, he denied Jesus 3 times at the end there. And so it's recorded in the Gospel of John what Peter did, filled with shame and hurting and grieving, and in that place of just darkness, he says, I'm going fishing. And the guy who started the journey in the Bible by fishing but coming up empty ends up saying, I'm going back there. He's empty again, and he's trying to find something. He's really backsliding back into his old lifestyle. And I would encourage us, even in this season when our churches are empty and our lives are empty, that we don't go back to our old ways when this is all over. That we don't backslide into trying to find fulfillment in things that leave us empty. But Peter did. He said, I'm going fishing. The disciples go with him. And they go fishing, but it's recorded that they fish all night and they come up empty because Jesus isn't there. They're grieving, they're hurting, they get no fish, and they're coming back. In John 21, it's recorded as they're coming back to shore with empty nets. They don't realize that the grave is empty too, but they have empty nets, and they don't realize that there's this guy on the shore, and it's not just any guy. It's resurrected Jesus. He's on the shore, and he yells out to the guys, and I love the way the New Living Translation says it because he calls them fellas. It's almost like he's playing with them. He's like, hey, fellas, did you catch any fish? And they're like, no. And they're angry, they're backslidden, they're grief-stricken, hurting, empty. And then he says, well, why don't you try your net on the other side? And they do. And then hope is risen because their nets are filled again. And John says to Peter, it's the Lord. Peter jumps out of the boat and runs to the one where he found fulfillment. And he runs to Jesus, and Jesus restores him. And Peter runs to that place that I want to encourage you to run to when you're empty. That you would run to Jesus because it's the same thing we need to do. When we find ourselves empty, we must run to the one that actually can fulfill. And if I could say anything to you on this Resurrection Sunday, I would say the grave is empty, and so your life doesn't have to be. And so I'd encourage you, if you're watching this and you find yourself feeling like something's missing and you find yourself feeling empty, that you would ask the resurrected and living Jesus to come into your life, to fill you with his Spirit so you can be filled this Easter and be blessed by God. God bless you, everybody. Happy Resurrection Day.